Education Scotland's guidelines for early reading are organised across three main areas. These are building a literacy-rich environment through interactions, experiences and spaces, developing skills for reading, and building independent and engaged readers. For each of the areas pictured, a suite of videos has been developed to support professional learning. The videos have been carefully developed to align with Scotland's Curriculum for Excellence guidance. Throughout the video, some technical terms are used to describe aspects of early reading. The QR code shown on the slide will allow you to access a glossary with brief explanations of some of the terms used. Each area has been broken down into 4 themes. There is a video which explores each theme, identifying key messages and research which supports the guidance. This video is focused on the importance of building the knowledge of the child as a reader, as underlined on the slide. You may choose to watch this video in isolation, but it is recommended that the overall suite of videos is used to support a broader programme of professional learning. Knowledge of the child, their interests, context and range of skills should be used to identify strengths and potential barriers to reading. Within this video, we will explore these 3 key messages. Work in partnership with children, families and colleagues to explore, understand and identify interests, strengths, assess needs, barriers and wider experiences. Build knowledge of the child as a reader in relation to their language development and the 5 components, considering how they might impact each other. Strengthen the child's identity as a reader, valuing their motivations and choices. A list of signposted resources has been created to accompany this video. At the end of the presentation, you can return to the home page for the overall resource or a landing page which has further support for building knowledge of the child as a reader. Knowledge of a child, their interests, their context and range of skills should be considered when identifying strengths and barriers to learning. We need to consider the big picture of what a child brings to learning to read. Not just the skills we observe when listening to a child read a text in our classrooms or setting. The document Realising the Ambition describes an educator's role in developing a flexible, enabling and creative child-centred curriculum is to be responsive to the uniqueness of each child, their family and the context of the community in which they live. This description accurately describes the role and responsibility of all educators. When identifying a child's strengths and barriers to reading, practitioners should consider a number of important factors. Ellis and Rowe remind us that our focus as educators can often be on explicit skills associated with reading, such as decoding or fluency. However, we must consider the knowledge, experiences and interests which every child brings to the learning to read journey. The image shown on the slide highlights the 5 components of reading, as explored in the Developing Skills for Reading section of this resource. These may strengthen or slow progress in reading. The image also captures the factors which contribute to a literacy-rich environment, for example, development of oral language and a culture of reading for pleasure. A child's background knowledge and prior experiences will influence their reading interests and development. It is important to consider any impact from health experiences, such as interrupted attendance or any other factors which may impact on learning to read. Background knowledge and prior experiences which children bring to the reading journey are sometimes described as their funds of knowledge. All the aspects shown on this image make up a child's reading profile, which will be explored in more depth over the course of this video. For some children, reading will be associated with novels or storybooks. For some, it might be learning song lyrics, watching online videos, or gaming. Reading may also have a more functional role, for example, following instructions to build a model or following a recipe to make Play-Doh. Text in all their forms should be valued by educators if we are to understand what engages and interests the children and young people we teach. The Strathclyde 3-domain tool offers 3 lenses which allow educators to reflect on literacy teaching and assessment and consider a child's reading profile. All domains are important because research shows that all 3 are highly impactful on literacy learning. The cognitive knowledge and skills domain, which includes phonological awareness, phonics, concepts of print and comprehension, has been explored in detail across a number of videos within this resource. Let's go on to explore the cultural and social capital lens and then the identity and agency lens in more detail. If we consider the cultural and social capital lens in relation to reading, this might include an understanding of the interactions that children have had with reading in their home and community. We need to recognise and value the different and varied reading experiences which all children will bring with them to the classroom or setting. In viewing these as funds of knowledge, we can build on these experiences and interests, viewing them as strengths rather than potential barriers or deficits. Let's now consider the identity and agency lens. Ellis and Rowe describe literacy as being closely connected with our identity. As educators, it is our role to plan learning and teaching of reading which promotes a positive reader identity and guide children to feel part of a reading community. In terms of agency, children must experience reading which is important and useful to them if they are to see themselves as readers now and in the future. The factors which contribute to our identity and agency as a reader will be explored later in this video. The first key message reminds us to work in partnership with children, families and colleagues to explore, understand and identify interests, strengths, needs, barriers and wider experiences. Children vary in important ways, including their specific interests, personalities, culture and heritage, languages, prior experiences and motivations, as well as individual needs and barriers. It is important to draw upon all of these to explore, understand and identify how this knowledge can help build an understanding of a child's strengths and the supports required to develop as a reader. We should work with others to understand what to look for, recognising that reading draws on various aspects of development. In addition to the learning experiences and the critical influences of other people in a child's life. For example, some physical aspects such as vision, hearing, speech and language may need to be explored with families and other health professionals. Psychologists or allied health professionals may be involved with children who have additional support needs such as ADHD, autism and dyslexia. They may also need to be involved in an assessment of identified needs, which helps us to understand the barriers which children can face when learning to read. The Addressing Dyslexia Toolkit Reading Circle resource has a list of helpful questions for discussion and/or investigation when considering the needs of learners who may be experiencing literacy difficulties. Please see the signposting section at the end of this video. Starting with the child, it's important to understand and consider their views, their strengths, their interests and motivations, and how you can use this knowledge to consolidate and build on their reading progress. Observing and talking to children as they engage with text during play and across all learning experiences can build up a picture of the child as a reader. It is important to intervene sensitively when we see aspects of these skills needing supported. Ellis and Rowe remind us that noticing a child's engagement should prompt educators to reflect on how familiar or unfamiliar a particular aspect of literacy learning is, and consider how we can bridge this for the learner. For example, if children have not had experiences of exploring how a storyline or character in the text has made them feel, then modelling this during shared reading experiences will support them to connect with text in this way. Scotland's curriculum places learners at the heart of education. It is needs-led, rights-based and designed to be inclusive for all children. It is underpinned by the legislative framework and national policy drivers such as Getting It Right for Every Child, also known as GIRFEC. GIRFEC is a strength-based approach which places the child and their family at the heart, promoting choice with full participation in decisions that affect them. It emphasises working together with families. The image on the slide of the GIRFEC My World triangle helps us to consider all aspects of a child's world, including how they are growing and developing, their rights and needs, and their connection to family, friends, community, and society. Recognising parents and carers as the first and ongoing educators of their own children is key to valuing the knowledge they have of their child at home, as well as in schools or settings. They can provide insight into their child's feelings about reading, their abilities, their likes, dislikes, interests and hobbies, language and culture, all of which are invaluable when trying to build knowledge of the child as a reader. They can also provide useful health information, for example, if their child has had frequent ear infections at an early age, which is impacting on their ability to hear sounds in words. At the centre of conversation with parents about their child, there should be a focus on the child's strengths, interests, and how well they are doing, including their next steps. There must be a willingness to be open, to listen, and to acknowledge that a shared approach with parents and carers is best for the child. It is important to take account of the support families may need to be fully involved and engaged in the process. For example, some parents may struggle with their own literacy or have had previous negative experiences of engaging with school. Some parents may have difficulties attending meetings due to caring responsibilities. And some parents may have English as an additional language or come from a country that has different educational systems and expectations. Irrespective of the possible barriers, it is crucial that educators make every effort to engage parents as respected and valued partners in all aspects of their child's education. This can also help to ensure that successful strategies are shared and used consistently across settings and home, where possible. For guidance on working with families, please see the signposted resources. As this quote from the Circle Inclusive Learning and Collaborative Working resource reminds us, supporting learners requires collaborative working at many different levels. Effective partnership working with colleagues and partners requires clear lines of communication and agreement of roles and responsibilities. This, together with a culture which respects and values the perspectives and contributions of everyone in the team, including the learner, parents and carers, educators, support staff, leadership and management, health visitors, allied health professionals, support for learning, partner services and agencies helps lead to effective collaboration. Staff working in more informal environments, for example in the playground or in a breakfast or after-school club, often hear about children's lives and observe their developing interests, which can provide useful information about their wider experiences and motivations. Partners such as health visitors, speech and language or occupational therapists can help explore, understand and identify barriers which may be impacting reading progress. For example, when exploring the impact of oral language on developing skills as a reader, we can use helpful guides produced by speech and language therapists to understand what typical development is and when their assessment and intervention would be helpful in supporting reading progress. Please find these guides in the signposting section at the end of this video. Early and good communication between education staff, allied health professionals and parents is more likely to lead to coordinated and appropriate planning, support and monitoring for each child. At transition points for children, for example from early learning and childcare settings to primary 1 or from one class to another, it is important that time is given for educators and other agencies to share knowledge of the child. The next key message encourages us to build the knowledge of the child as a reader in relation to their language development and the 5 components, considering how they might impact each other. In order to build our knowledge of the child as a reader, we need to consider the overlap between the cognitive knowledge and skills required for the 5 components of reading and the background knowledge and experience which support language development. If we consider the social or cultural capital lens, which we heard about earlier in the video, these personal connections from home and their community can help shape the funds of knowledge which children bring when learning to read. Throughout their early years, children's language development will be shaped by their environment and interactions with those around them. Therefore, building an understanding of the background knowledge and experience will provide us with valuable information for teaching them to read, especially when it comes to supporting children's comprehension. In particular, their ability to make inferences to fill the gaps that occur in language, as well as the ability to monitor and adjust reading to support comprehension processes as and when necessary. On this slide, we have considered how children's background knowledge and experience supports comprehension in 3 ways. Firstly, children's early experiences with text in their home and community environment will help to develop their concepts of print, building the knowledge of language which is required for reading. Secondly, children will bring to their reading all of the things they have learned about the world around them, including their continual learning across curricular areas. It is, of course, easier to understand and recall a text if you already have some knowledge of the topic or can make some connection to the content or ideas explored. If all children are to make sense of what they read, the environment of the classroom or setting needs to be one in which everyone will encounter texts that speak to their background knowledge and experience. And thirdly, Breadmore et al. Make the link between background knowledge and children's understanding of words, as the more they know about a subject, the more likely they are to have the necessary breadth and depth of vocabulary to process information on the topic effectively. When considering the importance of background knowledge and experience, we can also ask ourselves what knowledge is seen as valuable in our settings. If we take the funds of knowledge approach, what really counts as real-life knowledge should be determined by the learner and based around what is interesting and useful to them. Throughout the resource, strong links have been made to the significant impact that oral language development can have upon the 5 components of reading. The National Literacy Trust recognise that oral language skills are vitally important to support children's ability to develop as readers, enabling them to comprehend text and experience reading enjoyment. A child's journey through phonological and phonemic awareness into phonics will require them to hear, identify, manipulate and produce a range of sounds. A wide oral vocabulary and familiarity with language structures helps learners to understand the written form of language. Reading fluency will be directly linked to children's oral language skills as they learn to read with appropriate pace and expression, and the development of oral comprehension skills is also identified as an important precursor to reading comprehension. It is therefore perhaps not surprising that due to the range of research emphasising its importance to the reading process, in this quote Konza suggests that oral language development be seen as the 6th component of reading. The Department for Education and Child Development in Southern Australia advised that children should use the 6 components in combination, highlighting that an integrated approach is essential to provide learning connected to other experiences. While educators may focus on individual components at different times, these should not be seen as a set of isolated skills and need to be integrated through reading opportunities throughout the day. In order to fully consider the integration of oral language development into reading, it is important to develop an understanding of language backgrounds, taking account of the accents, dialects and forms of language that are part of children's everyday lives. In this quote, Castles, Russell and Nation acknowledge that there are many different aspects of reading which must be learned, including decoding, fluency and comprehension. However, this doesn't mean that teaching time should be devoted equally to all of them at all points of reading acquisition. Rather, teaching to support these is likely to be most effective at particular points of development. This links back to the 3 domains and the idea of noticing what children need. Carefully considering when to focus upon different aspects of reading allows us to take account of the challenges placed upon learners at the different stages of their reading journey. Breadmore et al. Highlight that at the beginning of reading development, word recognition requires so much effort that it may restrict comprehension. For example, if individual words have to be decoded using letter-sound correspondences, this places high demands on working memory. As a result, limited working memory capacity remains available for other aspects, such as making inferences using word meanings across the text. As word reading skills and fluency improves, children's comprehension skills, such as their ability to use their background knowledge and reasoning skills, become more important and dominant. There is also a developing relationship between comprehension and vocabulary as children gain more reading experience. Through reading, children gain experience of less common vocabulary and greater variety of language uses. As reading comprehension improves, children are able to use context to help them to understand the meaning of new words that they encounter for the first time in text. As their reading progresses, they begin to read more text, which exposes them to a greater number and variety of words, providing more opportunities for vocabulary growth. Building knowledge of the child as a reader is crucial for effective assessment. Pafford recognises one of the key principles of early years education is that we start with where the child is, focusing on what they can do, is interested in, and building on this. This approach to assessment for all children is already embedded within the 2004 Additional Support for Learning Act. On this slide, Pafford highlights that assessment should be positive, celebrating children's achievements and valuing their struggles and mistakes. They also make the important point that assessment should be formative, concerned with the process as well as the product, with meaning making as well as code breaking. Developing a clear picture of children's understanding of a text can be challenging if they have difficulty reading words. Children might use so much cognitive effort to read the individual words that insufficient resources remain to apply their comprehension processes. The opposite can be true if children with weaknesses in comprehension appear to read the words on the page fluently, as this may disguise their reading difficulties to some extent. Alternatively, some children may make good progress initially, but then their reading comprehension plateaus. We therefore need to ensure that we are effectively assessing reading comprehension in order to identify and meet the needs of all learners. Having a solid understanding of children's language development and progress within the 5 components of reading will only make a difference to learners if we use information from focused observation to plan effectively. As quoted on the slide, Pafford suggests that planning based on knowledge of the child can be effective, exciting, and remain flexible and able to respond quickly to change and development. Further information about planning based on our knowledge of the child can be found in the Responsive Planning of Universal Approaches video. The final key message promotes strengthening the child's identity as a reader, valuing their motivations and choices. McGowan et al. Refer to reader identity as 3 things: how capable children believe they are in comprehending texts, the value they place on reading, and their understanding of what it means to be a particular type of reader. They explain that reader identities are shaped by several factors, including past and current reading experiences. For some children, this will stem from successful reading experiences, whilst others may be shaped by more negative experiences. The child's environment, which can consist of home, community, settings or school, and the messages about their reading conveyed by important others, such as family, peers and educators. We should seek to fully understand how these factors can influence the child's sense of identity and agency as a crucial component of the three-domain model which we heard about earlier. How children identify themselves as a reader can have a significant impact on their confidence, motivations and attitudes towards reading. These influence the beliefs and judgments children make about their abilities and the feelings that they have towards reading. This can have a negative effect on those who identify themselves early as poor or even non-readers, as children with a more positive reader identity are more likely to engage in reading activities. Children who have not developed this more positive reader identity may be less likely to choose from a variety of different texts, limiting the amount of reading experience that they have to draw upon. As reader identity can be based upon what a school or setting presents as good reading, it is very important to broaden our understanding of what it means to be a reader, in order to lead to a more inclusive use of the term and ultimately encourage more children to self-identify as readers. Motivation can have a crucial influence on whether children choose to read or not. It has been described as an energizer that enables children to engage the resources and strategies needed for reading comprehension, resulting in better performance. Medford and McEwen found that children's confidence in their reading skills was a stronger predictor of their motivation to read than their actual reading skills. Therefore, increasing children's confidence in their reading abilities can positively impact on their motivation to read. This highlights the vital role that educators and families can play in boosting children's confidence in their reading skills. This quote from Breadmore et al. Emphasises the potential challenges which can result from lower levels of reading motivation if children have negative early experiences of reading. When children view themselves as less competent readers, negative attitudes can lead to the vicious cycle where children are not practicing reading to develop, resulting in poorer reading skills and potentially increased negative feelings towards reading. This highlights the importance of promoting positive reading experiences and nurturing reading motivation as an essential aspect of teaching for all learners. This can be helped through ensuring that classroom settings and outdoor areas are comfortable, inviting spaces for children to read and have enjoyable interactions with text. Children may be encouraged through intrinsic motivation, where reading is seen to be worthwhile and offer personal enjoyment. Evidence tells us that readers with high intrinsic motivation have been shown to read more, engage with text in greater depth, make more inferences, and experience a wider range of text. However, there can be times where it may be appropriate to use extrinsic motivators, such as incentives to encourage children to engage with reading, particularly if they avoid reading or are fearful of failure. Extrinsic motivation may also encourage a child to read for social reasons, including reading to share or discuss books with friends or family. It is important for us to critically reflect on the agency which children have to be active in their own learning. They need to have a sense of ownership and self-determination in their reading experiences, which includes the range of choices available to them. Children will feel more motivated and are likely to read more if they have a choice of reading material. Greater control over what they choose to read can promote children's interest, with research confirming that children prefer books that they pick for themselves. In the signposting section, we have provided a link to an illustrated poster featuring The Rights of a Reader by Daniel Pinnock. Adopting a rights-based approach to reading can help to promote the agency that children have about their own reading choices. In order for children to truly value reading, they need opportunities to read texts that are relevant to their interests and experiences. These may be texts that their friends are reading, or perhaps texts that are of some practical use to them. Curriculum for Excellence guidance includes a wider definition of texts, which may be relevant to the everyday lives of learners. Texts not only include those presented in traditional written or print form, but also orally, electronically, or on film, such as maps, comics, film clips, and games. Advancements in technology means that children are also likely to have increased exposure to multimodal texts, where a combination of two or more modes of communication, such as print, spoken text, images, and film, are used. It is also important to consider the ready access that children have to a wide range of text and to value these alongside book reading. These should be highly visible throughout settings, classrooms, and the wider environment to promote the chances that children will choose something to read. Access to text should be carefully considered within your local context. Some communities or schools may have a library where children can regularly spend time browsing and choosing books, whereas in other areas, online audiobooks or films may be a more accessible option. For some learners, an important strategy is to hear the text at the same time as reading it. Audio texts provide a highly valuable support to increase vocabulary and build background knowledge. The more opportunities that children have to access and understand text, the more they can engage with print, which increases the opportunities to learn independently. Castles, Russell and Nation emphasise that independent reading offers the greatest opportunity to expose children to as many words as possible. Print exposure gives opportunities to encounter new words and language structures and to practice literacy skills and strategies. This is particularly important for children who experience literacy difficulties. This final quote from Breadmore et al. Provides a helpful summary for the key message. As the importance of reading motivation, attitudes, and perception of self are key predictors of the amount that children read by choice and therefore their print exposure. A video overview, glossary, signposted resources, and some reflective questions have been created to accompany this video. You can use the QR code on the screen to access these.